Great, well, thanks everyone. I appreciate you sticking around later. So I asked Kenny if we could maybe put me last because I felt like there was a natural evolution in how we're speaking today. So I'm going to talk more about customer success, and I'll explain what that is in a second. I only have 9 slides, so I've got to draw this out for 20 minutes, but to share a little bit about me. So I grew up in northern Alberta in a town called Bonnyville. After high school, I moved to Australia, spent 10 years there. Joined Xerox very early in my career. I was 19 years old, and through a junior program, I was put into the group that was the most senior salespeople at Xerox. So I really like that whole Fox mentality that you mentioned earlier, because I learned very early in my career that it's not about just the product that you're selling or the value that you're providing, but how do you actually differentiate yourself completely from the competition. So with Xerox, there's this story of, I inherited quick copies, so there was 110 quick copies across Australia, New Zealand, and I could have gone after each one of them individually, but when I talked to them, I found out what their main issue was actually they had an HR challenge. They weren't able to roll out enablement to all of the stores from central office. And that was one of Xerox's core differentiators. I mean, we were all about employee training, so we actually set up a program where our HR team trained quick copy, and then that led to business across all 110 stores. So it's a philosophy that I really try to be a Fox as much as I can. With Right Now, yeah, I was with them for 10 years in Australia, then they transitioned me to Canada. I took a break. I quit Right Now at my 10-year anniversary to the day. I became a homeopath, and I opened a practice in the Danforth, so I did that for a few years. And then when Gainsight called, which is where I am now, it was just too unique of an opportunity, and I really believed in the organization and what they were trying to achieve, and so left alternative medicine and came back into tech. So Gainsight at a glance, some of you might have heard of the name before, but we've been around for about 5 years. We're the fastest growing company in the Valley, so 1,500% revenue growth over the last 2 years. From the very beginning, our entire value prop is all around your existing customers and customer success. It's a pretty fun organization as well. Last year, so we host an annual conference. Last year we had a party on an aircraft carrier, and Vanilla Ice played, and so we've got the next one coming up in a few weeks, so we expect around 5,000 people. So what do we mean when we talk about customer success? When we look at the old world, and we talked about that a lot today, how do you acquire more leads, generate more accounts in the funnel? But really, with that focus, especially with the subscription economy, support tended to be more of a reactive type model. So really where we help organizations is from the moment that you acquire a client, how do you make sure that they're adopting your technology, you're expanding that relationship, and then you're retaining them, you're renewing them. So what is customer success? And I think CX was really strong in the B2C space, and we really focus on B2B. So it's all about how do you define what those customer outcomes are? What is it that your customer is really trying to achieve? Combining that with delivering the right experience. And that experience might be a high-touch, white-glove service, but for your SMB customers or your low-revenue ones, maybe you want to automate that through technology. But it's those two combined that actually equals customer success. And a lot of us know this. I imagine that most of us are in the subscription SaaS space. So the cost of acquisition for a client is, on average $1.07 versus 9 cents. So really, if you're spending all of that investment and time and energy to acquire a new customer, you might not actually see them being profitable until 1.5 years, 2 years, or longer in. So it's really important to focus that energy on making sure that you're retaining them. So we've actually gone one step even further. And so Gainsight as an organization, we don't just have a technology or a product. We've really tried to create this whole category, as talked about earlier, with customer success. So taking that one step further from the funnel to the hourglass, we're really talking about the revenue helix. So if you're doing this well and you're demonstrating ROI to your clients, they're generating 3 opportunities for you. The lead for the renewal, but also an expansion lead, so an upsell opportunity. And finally, a lead for a new logo. So you're really mobilizing them, and I think a lot of you might know Influitive. Influitive is a Toronto company that are very much about mobilizing your B2B customers to be advocates for you, and we very much believe in that as well. So when we talk about those 3 models that I mentioned, really what you're also seeing is a change in an impact in the numbers. So gross retention rates can range from 86% at the low end in the beginning, and we're seeing upwards to 95%. Net retention, when we refer to net retention, that means it includes your expansions with your customers. So that's where we start getting into the over 100%, seeing net retention rates of 117%. And if you look at an organization, this is an example of Retention Inc. versus Churn Company. What's the point in spending all that money and acquiring your customers if they're just falling out the bottom? If you're retaining them and they're continuing to expand with you, you can see the impact that will have in a few years. But even impacting the valuation of the organization. So if we look at leading SaaS companies, so we have about 500 clients now. They're ranging from small 30-employee companies up to large SaaS. And we're also seeing this spill over to the traditional technology organizations, even telecom, hardware, on-premise organizations. But once you start getting into the over 100% retention rates, then that's when you start seeing these valuations, these multipliers of anywhere from 7 to 15%, for example, with some of these leading ones. Actually Genesis recently at a conference was talking about CS as like small CS and big CS. And really, you could look at it as a function in your organization. So many of you have or are starting to think about customer success, and you have a number of people that are assigned to your existing clients. But really, for it to be successful, it needs to be a company-wide imperative. So everybody needs to rally around the customer, make sure that you've got cross-functional visibility, you've got a good understanding of what the health is, you've got proactive triggers of when things might be going off the rails. So that's one of the recommendations that we make for sure as well. As a profession, so I've been with Gainsight for 3 years. I mean, these numbers are just kind of staggering when you look at, if you search for LinkedIn, on Customer Success Manager, there's 20,000 results now. It's one of the fastest growing professions in the industry. And what we're finding is it's actually attract not only the CCO, but potentially the CEO as well of an organization over time, because you're learning everything about that customer. You're feeding back to product management, and you're having that intimate knowledge. It's also, LinkedIn have quoted it the 3rd most promising career. So if you're looking for a new career or you know people that might be as well, happy to chat with any of you about that. I've actually, we've set up different CS communities, kind of like what they have here with SalesTO, one in Waterloo, one in Vancouver. We've got an executive one going on in Toronto. And Kenny and I have been talking about maybe doing a roadshow in the fall where we would have one across the country as well, just specifically around customer success. And so what we're also finding is this is now mainstream. So 7 out of the 10 Global 500 companies have adopted CS. And even a lot of the analyst, market research firms, and management consulting firms are all saying basically it's a do or die. You have to, you need to get onto this bandwagon if you're a SaaS company or a subscription company and you want to make sure that you survive for the long term. So I did bring a copy of it. So as I mentioned, we have technology, which I'm not talking about today. But the book that we published, actually, we've sold 25,000 copies. And even Wiley had said it's rare that a book stays in publication and in circulation after 2 years. So I think that's also a testament of just how much this industry is growing. So yeah, welcome for you to pick up a copy of the book. I've got a copy here too. And the community, so I mentioned that we have the conference coming up in a few weeks. But yeah, we really like to bring together thought leadership and best practices. So that's all I had. 9 minutes, Kenny. You have a question?
Can you turn on the mic? Okay. Compensation. There's often this philosophy that salespeople are paid based off the revenue that they bring in, not necessarily how they treat customers. So
yes.
I'm curious to know how Gainsight thinks about compensating people in customer success when their job is to maintain good relationship, good standing with the customer, not necessarily always just drive revenue, but represent the brand.
Yeah, so definitely there's a higher percentage of base, of course, versus a salesperson, right? So probably more like a 70-30, kind of 80-20 split. What I generally see is like team quotas around retention. There could be something around engagement, could be around NPS, and then there's a lot of back and forth at the moment about whether CS should take on just renewals as well or be focused on adoption. So that's kind of an ongoing thing. I don't think anyone's resolved. It depends on the complexity of the product that you're delivering and how much you want that CS person to be seen as a trusted advisor. But yeah.
So you are compensating people not solely off just revenue, but NPS and engagement and things.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Great. Any other questions?
One right here.
Hi.
Natasha, have you ever frustrated a future customer in your pursuit to establish an ROI? And maybe tell us if you've ever managed to turn that around.
So sorry, could you repeat the question? Frustrated them in establishing oh, because they're not a client yet, do you mean? Or, it's funny because our CFO internally has a very different view about ROIs. He thinks, he doesn't believe any ROI that's ever presented to him in a sales cycle. So it makes it really tough when we ask him what. But I try to be really conservative with it, and I also find that sometimes we might have a general ROI model that's going to work for 80%, but sometimes if you do the research and really dig into what that customer is trying to achieve, there might be something that you didn't even consider as part of your ROI model. Like maybe they were planning on adding 8 headcount over the next 2 years, and you're going to save them on adding 3 or whatever it might be. So that's my view on the ROI, but I also think that references are really important as well to establish that credibility. So I'm very big on connecting my network together as well. Thanks. Sure.
Hi, quick question. I know that the Gainsight is used widely across a lot of customer success teams. And that could vary from company to company, whether they're just tasked with retention or if they're also focused on upselling, so totally fair. So let's focus just on churn reduction. Okay. Is there anything that you've seen that directly reduces the risk of churn in the accounts? And anything that maybe you guys are focused on or you advise your companies to focus on to reduce risk?
So I think there's, it's hard to say that there's one answer, right? Because there's avoidable churn and there's non-avoidable churn. So I think leveraging the data is really important. There's also models you could run where you look at, say, the last 18 months, why customers left you in the last 18 months, and then that can help build a predictable score or like model going forward. Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's like a specific sort of answer for that. We always recommend just starting small. Like maybe it's just mapping out what your journey is, doing segmentation, figuring out what that life cycle is, and just starting with the model like bit by bit. But yeah, thanks. Great.
Thank you.
Cool.
Woo. Thank you.